You're kneeling in a frozen stream in Central Europe, 50,000 years ago. Every root you dig up snaps in your hand, brittle and hollow. Your breath fogs in front of you. 19 degrees below freezing, and the herds that usually cross this valley haven't shown up in 19 days. Behind you, your children are watching to see what you found. You found nothing. Your hands are empty, and tomorrow you'll have to try again anyway, because there is no other option. Right now, an empty kitchen means a 4-minute drive, or a tap on your phone. For most of human history, an empty kitchen meant this: no backup plan, no delivery window, just the next attempt. So how did ancient humans survive when there was nothing left to eat? No stored grain, no refrigeration, no guarantee the next meal would ever come. And yet, the species made it through anyway, generation after generation after generation. Part of the answer starts with a problem nobody expects. Meat alone can kill you. In 2025, archaeologist Lutz Kindler and a team working at Neumark Nord, a Neanderthal site in Germany, published findings on something they called a fat factory. At least 172 animal carcasses had been smashed with stone hammers into small fragments, then boiled for hours, 125,000 years ago, purely to extract the fat hidden inside the bones. Once the grease floated to the surface, it was skimmed off and eaten. The reason wasn't taste. Researchers estimate a Neanderthal-sized body could safely draw only around 200 calories a day from protein before the liver couldn't keep up, a state now called rabbit starvation. And a hunter-gatherer needed roughly 2 to 3 times that many calories just to get through a winter day. So when lean meat was all that was left, fat wasn't a treat. It was the only thing standing between a full stomach and poisoning yourself to death. So if the danger wasn't running out of food, but running out of the right kind of food, how do you build a body that can survive that gap? Here's where it gets stranger. In 2019, Duke University researchers Davy Swain Lenz and Greg Ray compared fat tissue across humans, chimpanzees, and macaques. The number that stood out: wild primates typically carry less than 9% body fat. Healthy humans carry between 14 and 31%. That gap isn't a side effect of modern comfort. It's an inheritance. Evolution rewired how human fat cells store and release energy, partly to feed a brain that burns a disproportionate share of the body's daily calories. The result is a portable, wearable pantry no other primate has. Everyone assumes what saved early humans was cleverness. Better spears, sharper tools. The truth is, one of the most important survival technologies wasn't a tool at all. It was fat, carried directly on the body, functioning as insurance for the weeks when hunting failed. Insurance gets you through a bad week. It doesn't feed a family for a season. So what filled that gap? Knowledge did. Between 1963 and the late 1970s, anthropologist Richard Lee lived among the Ju Hoansi, or Kung San, in the Dobe area of the Kalahari Desert in Botswana. He documented over 100 species of wild plants the community classified as edible, ranked by taste, abundance, and how reliably they survived a bad season. One nut sat at the top of that list. The mongongo tree kept producing even in drought years when everything else failed, and Lee calculated that a daily portion of roughly 300 mongongo nuts, about 5 ounces, delivered 1,260 calories and 56 grams of protein. That's the caloric equivalent of 2.5 pounds of cooked rice, cracked open by hand under a tree that never stopped bearing fruit. During one study period, camp members brought in 410 pounds of meat, compared to 700 pounds of gathered vegetable food shared communally across the group. Hunting got the attention. Gathering and the deep botanical knowledge behind it did more of the actual work of keeping people alive. Everyone pictures ancient survival as a man with a spear, chasing dinner across open ground. The truth, based on decades of hunter-gatherer fieldwork, is that plant knowledge, not hunting skill, supplied most of the daily calories in societies like the Ju Hoansi, and it was carried mainly by the people history barely wrote about. But knowledge and body fat only cover ordinary scarcity. What about the extreme kind, a journey into terrain that offered nothing at all? In 2018, microbiologist Frank Meixner at Urec Research in Bolzano, Italy, published a study on the stomach contents of Tsi, the 5,300-year-old mummy found in the Alps. Roughly 40 to 50% of his last meal was pure animal fat, from ibex and red deer alongside einkorn wheat. Traces of carbon in the tissue suggested the meat had been smoked, and it had never been heated above roughly 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Dried and preserved, not cooked fresh. The way you'd prepare food meant to last for a journey rather than a single sitting. That's not a random snack. That's a calculated load of energy, eaten by someone about to cross a high-altitude pass more than 3,000 meters up, where nothing edible would grow for days. Everyone assumes the Iceman's last meal was just a meal. The truth is closer to a calculation. A man loading roughly half his stomach with pure fat before walking into terrain built to starve him. So the honest answer was never one invention, one hero, one clever trick. It was 4 systems layered on top of each other, running at the same time in the same body. Emergency fuel stored directly on the frame. The technical knowledge to render fat when meat alone would poison you. A communal inventory of plant knowledge broad enough to survive most lean seasons. And the foresight to load up before entering ground with no food at all. Strip out any one of those systems, and the others weren't enough on their own. The fat runs out eventually. The plant knowledge fails in a drought severe enough. The provisioning only buys a few extra days. Survival wasn't one solution. It was redundancy, stacked 4 layers deep, so that when one system failed, another was already running underneath it. Go back to that frozen stream. The hands are still empty, but the body kneeling there is carrying fat reserves no chimpanzee could grow. Knowledge of 100 backup plants passed down like an emergency manual, and a plan already forming for tomorrow's search. Nothing left to eat was never actually nothing. It was a system running exactly as designed, built to survive the very conditions meant to break it. Now think about the kitchen behind you, the one that's never actually empty, where hunger is a choice you make between meals, instead of a countdown you can feel in your ribs. Ancient humans spent their fat, their knowledge, and their foresight just to see tomorrow. Most of us will never have to spend hours at all. The real famine was never a shortage of food. It was a shortage of margin. And for most of human history, staying alive meant closing that gap with everything you had, one stored calorie at a time.